Jussie Smollett may face federal hate crimes prosecution. My name is Patrick Nolan. I'm an attorney licensed in the state of Missouri. This is Pat Talks Law. By now, everyone has heard the story of Jussie Smollett, an actor who falsely reported a hate crime against himself. The story is a sad one. Smollett paid a couple of guys to rough him up so that he could claim he was gay bashed by MAGA hat thugs. After the truth came out, Smollett was indicted on 16 felony counts of filing a false report. The charges were dropped after prosecutors and defense attorneys reached an agreement for Mr. Smollett to perform 2 days of community service and forfeit his $10,000 cash bond to the city. Now, Mr. Smollett may still face federal prosecution for his actions in the hoax. Let's talk about the indictment and the dismissal first. I believe it is likely that Mr. Smollett was horrendously overcharged in the first place. The 16 counts were all for identical charges stemming from the same hoax. In law, there are a few concepts that should be discussed before going any further. First, a continuing course of conduct. A continuing course of conduct is a pattern of conduct comprised of 2 or more acts, evidencing a continuity of purpose. A person may pull a truck up to a house and burglarize the house. They go in, they fill a backpack with stuff. The bag is brought out and tossed into the back of the truck. That person then goes back into the house and grabs the television. Then they make another trip for the safe and a final trip for the computers. Now that could be charged as 4 counts of burglary and 4 counts of stealing. But as it is a continuing course of conduct, it should rightly be charged as 1 count of burglary and 1 count of stealing. In Jussie's case, there are 16 identical counts of making a false report that came out of the grand jury. This was all in furtherance of the hoax. It realistically should have been 1 or maybe a couple of counts at best. Seeking 16 counts was ridiculous overkill, and the defense would have been able to get the extra charges kicked. The second, third, and fourth concepts really relate to how do they get those charges kicked. The rule of lenity and the Eighth Amendment, respectfully, are the second and third concepts to consider. The rule of lenity is a doctrine that requires ambiguities in the criminal statutes to be resolved in the defendant's favor. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. Stacking charges to get a result of more time for false reporting than a person would get for an actual hate crime or even murder is cruel and unusual. So what did he face for the 16 felony charges? Well, Jussie could have been sentenced to up to 48 years in prison. And remember, just in January, Jason Van Dyke, a former Chicago police officer, was sentenced in Chicago to only 81 months, less than 7 years, for murder. So yeah, that's a bit excessive for filing a false report, no matter how egregious the false report is. Finally, the fourth concept is double jeopardy. If any of those charges overlapped, then the jury could not have entered a verdict on both. I don't know if they did, but you can bet Jussie's attorneys looked at that closely. With those concepts in mind, it is not surprising that the prosecutor looked at the case and then reached an agreement that was on par with what other offenders of similar cases have received. Now understand, that doesn't mean other people with 16 felonies, but rather other people with filing a false report charges. Now, this case was also a political hot football. There was little upside to the case for the prosecutor, for the state, and every reason for them to resolve it. Now, resolving it this quickly may present issues because of the political issues. You know, people are angry, people are hurt, and people want to lash out. They are not happy that, and enter your blank here, the rich, liberal, or some other descriptor for Jussie got special treatment. Although I think we've shown that the result really isn't special treatment, and it's probably about right for the situation. But sitting on this case for a few months before reaching this agreement may have been much better optics for everybody. The next question is, will Jussie face federal charges? Maybe. If the intent was to prop up his career by being the victim of a hate crime, then mail fraud may come into play, as well as participating in a hate crime. If Jussie lied to federal officers during the investigation, or even going forward, he may face charges for lying. That's how they got Martha Stewart. The president has weighed in, and there may be federal charges for some aspect of the case. But he cannot be charged federally for filing a false report in Chicago. But you have to remember there's no such thing as a person who is not guilty of some felony, if we really look into it. Harvey Silvergate and Alan Dershowitz wrote 3 Felonies a Day, How the Feds Target the Innocent. I strongly recommend reading that book. It's very enlightening. Now, that's my take on Jussie's case. I'm not going to get into the minute details, but please feel free to agree or disagree in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the alert button. I try to post a video more than once per week, but sometimes I actually have to work. Thanks for watching.